Hi everyone, I am here tonight with Sarah Eggleston and we are going to be talking about coding boot camps as a new way to hire digital skills. And we're going to be exploring what coding boot camps are and how they are a great way to increase the diversity of people you bring in and the different skills that exist in them. Now, Sarah is the founder of Glow.io, which is a scheduling software for kind of dealing with looking at how people spend their time and kind of trying to get everything to fit together. We're not going to talk about that too much tonight, but do go and check it out. Definitely like what she's doing. But I'm actually going to jump straight in and get Sarah talking about coding boot camps and let's explore this pretty cool topic. So, Sarah.
Thank you for the plug.
Welcome. And yeah, tell us a bit about you. How did you get into tech? What's your background?
So I was one of those kids who loved maths at school. I did an engineering degree. I was doing some postgraduate research in engineering, which turned out wasn't my thing. But as part of it, I was using some Sun computers, for those of you who remember them, which I loved. And pretty much the rest has been history. The next thing I did was I joined IBM.
Wow, yeah. And I'm going for I'm aligning with you on the loving maths at school and then discovering programming. I wish I'd discovered programming a lot earlier. It would have been a lot easier. So how did you learn to program? How did you actually get
Mostly
into
on the
it?
job. At
Yeah.
IBM, I was primarily working in Java. That I learnt on the job. I've more recently been working Ruby on Rails, which I love, and I learnt that pretty much on the job. The closest I got to formal training was there were odd workshops in IBM, occasional ones, and I've done some online courses.
And so you didn't do anything in your degree when you were doing your engineering degree or anything like that? They didn't touch on it then?
I shouldn't mention this, should I? There was a module of assembler programming, and I failed it. So, effectively, no.
Yeah. So you got the underpinning stuff sort of.
I still don't do hardware to this day.
and so we're talking about coding boot camps. So what tell us a bit about what coding boot camps are and these I think you actually first introduced me to them because they're I hadn't really been looking in that direction, and you mentioned something in a post in the group, so that made me go and have a look up and find out more about them. But for anyone that doesn't know, tell us about what they are from what you know and why you think they're becoming popular.
So they're immersive, intense training. They're usually around 3 months, and pre-COVID they were pretty much all in person. They're obviously more of a mix now. Um, they are they are kind of the on-the-job learning without actually having to get a job first. In that, I think they do quite a lot of pair programming. You're with working with peers. You're learning by doing a live project, but there is some formal training as part of them as well. So there's, I think, is a bit of show and tell for a couple of hours. I haven't done one myself, so I
And
need
so
to find
it's
out full details.
it's that intense kind of your 3 months completely focused on learning to program, but learning to program in an applied way. From what I gather, it's kind of you given
Yes,
the project and you've got to
very,
really have a go at it.
very, very hands-on, and you've got to get the project working. And there are some related ones in areas like product management, UX design, data science. So it's not just coding either. There are boot camps in several areas of IT, and they're all really good routes in, as far as I know.
Yeah. And the other thing, so do they tend to be team related things, or are they individuals, or does it
That,
vary?
as far as I believe, they're team projects generally. Yes.
Yeah, it really interesting and different way, because I mean, you've learned to code on the job, and you know that when you're there and you've got to solve the problem, you do approach coding in a completely different way to this is a theoretical kind of how does code work and stuff. So it is quite a
Yeah,
different style of learning,
it
isn't
is.
it?
Yeah.
And do you think, so good question, can everyone learn to code?
Um, yes, if you want to enough.
Mm.
The thing I say is you don't have to have been good at maths. You and I are not good examples of this, but you need to be okay with the thing that happens to you in coding that also happens to you in maths, which is that it tells you when you get it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's an awful lot of areas where, even if you go back to sort of school level exams, if you get an answer like 24, it's probably right. And if you get an answer with 14 decimal places, it probably isn't. Coding's like that. You know when it's wrong and when it's right, and it's wrong a lot. It's still
Yeah.
wrong a lot for me now, and I'm several decades in. When you're starting, it's really wrong a lot. So you have to be okay with these little pokes that keep saying, "You got it wrong, you got it wrong, you got it right." And then the trade-off of that is when you get it right, you get that, "Wow, I'm right, it's
Yeah.
working." So, if you're okay with that and you're willing to put the time in, then anyone can learn. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm doing Advent of Code at the moment. I don't know if you've come across it, but
Yeah.
I'm learning Python as a result of doing it, and I'm getting a lot of wrongs at the moment. And
Yeah.
it's like, what? I just don't understand the message it's telling me, and I quite often
Yeah.
have to really dig down and then realize I've gone in completely the wrong direction. It was just that I missed a bracket or something, and it's
Yep.
just. But
Debugging is a skill in its own right, so you've got to learn that too.
yeah, that whole problem solving kind of, but the buzz when you get it, when you've gone through it
Yeah.
all, it's just, yeah, amazing feeling. And seeing it kind of come alive. So especially when I've done UX and stuff in the past, it's like, oh, I did that. I made that. That's cool.
Yeah, when you do the CSS and JavaScript stuff and it all looks really whizzy on the screen,
Yeah.
that can be amazing, yeah.
So you sort of mentioned this. Have you ever you've not done anything, an actual coding boot
Not
camp. Have you
not
done
really,
anything?
no.
No.
I've done an online course with Free Code Camp, and I did actually teach for Code First Girls, and they use materials for General Assembly, and they were very good.
So Code First Girls, just tell us a little bit more about that. What's that?
It's a charitable organisation aiming to train women into coding in the UK, and they're a great. Do
Yeah.
look them up if you're interested.
So a great way of getting
Yeah,
started, and
it's a great
it's
initiative.
not just girls then, it's beyond that as well.
Uh, Girls and women, yes.
Yeah,
I
okay.
was working with adult students.
That's really useful to know, because I saw it and thought maybe it's just girls, but actually, yeah, okay. One to look into, and I guess they want people to support them as well. So volunteers to help them do the teaching if that's what you've
Yes,
been involved in.
absolutely, yes.
Okay.
They're always looking for more.
Yeah. So what was it, because we're talking about coding boot camps, so what was it that made you start looking into them if you've never done one before, or you've never kind of actually been involved?
When I first came across them, I worked with a couple of people who'd done boot camps, and I was very impressed by the quality of the people I was working with. And then I worked in a company that was struggling to hire. Now it's a really tough hiring market at the moment for IT. If you've got a live profile on LinkedIn, you'll have noticed. Um, if you put that you're looking for a job, your inbox is full for sort of weeks on end of yes, please come work here, and especially so for senior developers. To the point that if you, as a small company, if you open a role for a senior developer, you might get somewhere between 0 and 5 people applying in a
Hmm.
couple of months. It's really hard hiring market. And I knew that, and I knew as well, it just so happened that although we were a small team, we were mix and mid and senior devs. So I just said, this is daft. We're not going to be able to hire anyone else with experience right now in the current market. We're a little bit too commutable from London. We can't pay enough to compete with London salaries because we're sort of rural bits of Hampshire. So I said, look, let's just go start talking to a boot camp. And we found one that was working the same programming language that we coded in. And in fact, luckily I had that conversation before we were actively hiring, when we were still just
Hmm.
thinking about it. So I went and made the connection with the boot camp. They didn't know me at that point, but I was sort of hello, this is me, this is us. We might be hiring at some point. And they turned around and said, oh, could you come and give us a presentation? And I said, absolutely, I've got one handy on GitHub. Let me come and talk to you about it, because that's the kind of thing boot campers don't always know about, is some of the intricacies of GitHub.
Yeah.
So I gave the pitch, and the joy of that was, we then, when we posted a job ad a couple of months later, it kind of went viral within that bootcamp community without us doing anything else, and we didn't
Yeah.
need to hire a recruitment agent. It was just brilliant.
So this was kind of, you got the chance to get in front of them, you gave them what they needed, you got to know them a bit and see their processes, and at the same time, when you did have something, you could just put it out there and
Yeah,
applicants
you
coming through.
you I should say you can build formal relationships with
Yeah.
boot camps as well. They're very keen to get recruiters on board, anyone who might be hiring on board.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such, yeah, it sounds like a really good model. And do you know how many people, how many people were in the audience when you were doing your talk? How big are
It was
the?
one of their cohorts, so it was about 20ish.
Okay. So it's a good way to get in front of quite a lot of coders,
It
and
is,
is,
and they all know each other. So it wasn't only that cohort that was started applying for jobs with us. We had people from who've done it. It's at different times as well.
Well, that's interesting. So they do actually encourage them to connect between the different
They
cohorts as
do. Well, and
well.
you know what social media is like these days.
Yeah, yeah. And so is there a typical person that might choose to do a boot camp?
So the boot camps themselves will tell you anybody's welcome.
Mm,
I think there is a little bit of a theme, which is it tends to be people get sort of late 20s or 30ish and they start to think about changing career. They've got a few savings and they mostly haven't had a family yet. So
mhm.
they're at that stage where they can afford it because boot camps are expensive. I'd love to see even more diversity than that, but at
Yeah,
least that they're career changers. They can come from all sorts of backgrounds before that and all sorts of degrees, for example, very much not necessarily science degrees.
yeah. So a really kind of different group of people
Yeah.
and motivated people as well because they've put their savings into doing this. So
Yes.
and given up. So for 3 months, completely focused on coding. So they've got to be ready to really go for it and commit to it. So it's useful to think of it like that. It's not people who have kind of been pushed in a particular direction or maybe aren't committed. These are people who are completely committed to, I want to code and I want to learn how to do it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
and how did the skills of the graduates compare to kind of typical computer science graduates that you might go out and recruit?
They're better coders. They're better practical, hit the ground running, code in this programming language and produce something that works
Mhm.
coders. They, yeah, it's, in a way, I actually prefer hiring them because they're going to be so much more useful so much more quickly.
But they tend to be focused on one particular programming language, I guess.
Yes, so there'll be less of that background context of
Mhm.
awareness around um, related languages or pieces like the DevOps.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, having worked in a university, knowing how long it takes a new programming I can't even say the word new programming language to get onto the syllabus, and
Yes.
it can take a university years to actually change
Decades.
their course. Yeah,
I think 2 years ago, I still knew someone teaching C++, plus plus, and you're like, "Please don't."
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Yeah, well, I used to work with the computer science department at York and see the different people from industry coming through and saying, we need you to be teaching this. And it would take so long, you have to tick so many boxes to make it happen. Whereas coding boot camps, they're starting up, making kind of, you can join them. And then, so it's a really good way to kind of focus and know that someone's coming out with the language that you need in your company. So that's a really interesting thing as well. And did you have to put any support measures or training in place for the new hires that you brought in, especially I guess if they're not associated with DevOps, then there could be something around that.
We tried to make sure that every one of them got to pair individually with one mid or senior developer.
Mhm.
So that's quite a hit when you first, especially if you hire more than one at once, it's quite a hit initially. You do take a productivity dip. But the payback's so great because you
Yeah,
watch them grow and they grow so quickly and they're so motivated. Um, yeah, we were trying to institute as well opportunities for them to share their knowledge. So just an hour once a month or once a fortnight, and time for people to go away and research and learn new technologies. And yeah, you do need some framework around it, but it so can be done.
and did you bring a few in at once so they could
Um,
support each other, or
two, we brought in two, yes,
yeah, so they could compare notes of how they were getting on and support each
yeah,
other in that way, as well as having support of more senior staff as well.
yeah.
Yeah. And but you didn't put any formal kind of sending them on particular training. It was more, let's pair you up with someone more senior and give you a mentor to guide you through.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
And but like you say, it can take a hit. And if you're in a small company, then it's how many
yeah.
senior developers have you got for that pairing
Can
up?
you pull off to, yeah,
Yeah.
to just to bed them in? But they get running so quickly. We had one in particular who's just been absolutely amazing.
Yeah. And so what do you see as the benefits? What are the benefits that came through for you?
They're just great. I think they're just a win for everyone, aren't they? They're great at teaching practical skills that companies, organisations are looking for, and they're a really good way for someone who might not have thought about coding while they were still in their formal education to make that switch as a career changer later on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess there's also the thing that you said earlier is that they come from so many different backgrounds that you could also be bringing someone into your business with a business background. They could have been doing all sorts of different things that could then add value and add
Yeah.
diversity in that way. So
Yeah, and
new
they can be
ideas.
from a relevant background, or for example, they might have been working in the same business as your customers or something like
Yeah.
that. There are lots of ways that there can be good advantages there.
And I haven't asked this specifically, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but the other thing is interesting is, so in terms of male female ratios, did you see anything different there, and in terms of the people
Yes,
you're working with?
uh, they're better on male-female ratios than certainly the IT industry as a whole is about 85% male, and they're certainly a lot better than that. They were also better on a non-white ratio as
Mhm.
well. But having said that, at least my impression is very much that the bootcamp courses are, but the people who applied to us weren't as diverse as I think the courses overall. I don't know if that's partly the whole rural Hampshire thing might not appeal to every
Why
demographic.
not?
Um, so yeah, but they're certainly a step in the right direction, even if they're
Yeah,
perhaps not the whole answer yet.
yeah. And I think that's a really interesting way to start looking at things. It's a different route into tech, and possibly something, even though it still costs a decent amount. I think you said it's less than a full university degree, so it's not.
It is. They're up to sort of 7, 8, 9,000 pounds, so it's quite a lot of money for 3 months.
Yeah.
It is quite the big investment. One of the things I would love to see, the government now has been talking about T levels, so technical exams that you do age sort of 16 to 19. And the idea is that these are for kids who don't want to do A levels. So they're
Mm,
instead of, and they're that bit more vocational. And I would love to see some of those digital T levels moving more towards what boot camps do, and then properly opening up that scope for kids from any background to come
yeah.
to join us in the tech world.
So what does T stand for in T levels then?
I've no idea.
Not,
Really
not, yeah, tech levels, but I'm
might be
assuming it's
tech.
not. Is it just aimed at tech, or is it broader than that?
No, but they are mostly vocational. So they are. So there's some engineering. I think a lot of them are the sciencey sort of side of
Mm.
things. Um,
But really, the applied kind of have a go, learn on the job,
yeah.
while and to not, but not quite an apprenticeship though.
No, so I think there's somewhat replacing BTECs, is it, or
Right.
that kind of
Yeah.
space?
Okay.
Um,
Yeah. Things keep coming back around, don't they? And and
well,
so
it would.
one of the things I was going to mention. So my experience now, since we spoke originally with boot camps, is so at the University of York they did a Step into Tech program, and it wasn't a boot camp, but it was like a taster of a boot camp for all graduates from the last couple of
Yeah,
years could apply and have a go, see if you like coding, and if you do, then you've got the chance to go on and do a boot camp. And I thought that was quite an interesting idea, seeing how that was coming through. And yeah, I spoke to a few of the graduates from that, and they're really, really motivated, really kind of keen to do something. So, and very diverse backgrounds. So
good, good.
so are there any particular challenges that companies should be aware of, you think?
The onboarding and training.
Mm,
Um, and the other thing I found I had to adjust to was people who know so much and are so good in one particular area, but then remembering that they don't know necessarily every detail of the operating system around it, and firstly being a bit surprised, and just making sure you're always there to help out.
yeah.
Because
So
when
they're almost
there's
too good that they.
yeah, when they're so independent in some areas, you forget that no, they still do need
Yeah.
some support. But yeah, they're mostly just so impressed with them.
Great. Wow. And what advice would you give? So if anyone, and this is particularly aimed at companies thinking about going to boot camps, recruiting, what advice would you give to them if they were looking at this?
Do it, absolutely
Yeah.
do it. Don't overbalance your team with juniors. You're going to
Mm,
need the mentoring, the pairing relationship. So basically, you want one spare, more senior developer working with each junior developer. So that will that will constrain the numbers you can absorb. But within that constraint, don't once if you're staying inside that, then really don't keep hiring, and plan because they will grow You can always plan if you hire 1 or 2 this year, there might be space for 1 or 2 more next year, and then maybe even 3 or 4 the year after that. You will find they will make good mentors as
Yeah.
time goes on.
Yeah, so they can mentor each other.
Yeah.
And from your experience, because there's that also that risk that you invest and then they move on somewhere else, and I guess that risk's always there. But the ones you recruited sort of stuck around and became part of the company,
I
from what I
it's
understand.
too recent for me to be able to answer that for
Right.
sure, but I would actually just go back to with the market the way it is, the odds are quite high that yes, once they get to 2 or 3 years and start to become more saleable, some of them will jump. But I'd just be queuing up the pipeline behind them
Yeah.
because unlike a lot of new hires, you'll have had the best part of those 2 years of productive work from them. It's probably only the first 3 months, maybe even 1 month if they're very good, that you're really investing in them hard. So you
Yeah.
even just getting that 1 or 2 years is still worth it to you. Um,
And isn't that because it's the interesting bit of so graduate recruitment often again you expect it
there
to
is
take
that.
years, but it's just in my head comparing the differences. You're usually teaching them the business skills and the how to apply the stuff, the more theoretical stuff, and I don't just mean theoretical there, but the stuff that they've been
Yeah,
doing in the university, how to apply this to the business. Whereas actually, if you spin it around and say, well, we're bringing someone in and they've got some of those business skills already, then it's just get and they're motivated. So yeah, downtime's a lot less then.
yeah.
Wow, brilliant. And if people want to know more, because I mean, it's really interesting and it's useful, I think, if you're trying to do this sort of recruitment, to know someone that's been through it and get some advice from them. So how could people get in touch with you if they'd like to know more?
My profile's on LinkedIn. I believe you've got the link. Is that right, Emma, or should I?
I will share the link. So yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
you
make
can
sure
look for
it's
me
in
as
there.
Sarah Eggleston, should find me as well.
And you're happy for people to just connect with you there and
Absolutely,
say
please do,
hi and
yes.
check out your business as well. Do another
That would
plug
be good.
there. I'm going to throw one more thing in there. So, which I haven't kind of prepped you with. So, coding boot camps that you've come across. Do you know how would you find a good one?
I would genuinely start reading the reviews. Get out
Mm,
there onto the, frankly, search engines, look at the reviews, look at who's being rated well. The one that comes top does tend to change from year to year. But anything in the top 10 is probably fine.
yeah,
And also make sure it's in the area that you're interested in. So if that is data science, for example, or product management, then they look for a specific one. If there's a specific language you care about learning, Python, Ruby on Rails, and so on, there are different ones.
yeah,
Um, but equally, if you're not fussed, you could do worse than pick one of the top 10 and just, yeah. If you ask them, they're always happy to put you in touch with former graduates from previous cohorts, so you can always ask around. And if you're not sure where the coding's for you, then I would, because it is quite a big investment financially, I would
mm,
start with online courses. There are free ones which are fairly good. There are paid ones which are even better. I like General Assembly. I like Free Code Camp too.
yeah,
And make the decision based off the online learning, and then if you're able to fund it, then go for the full investment and go for a boot camp.
yeah. I'm just going to be watching this because it's such an exciting space to be in, and just noticing the graduates, and I'm hoping we might be able to bring one of the graduates that you know or someone in to talk about their experiences as well, because I think that'll be really interesting too. Just get that
Yes,
sense
it
of
would.
what sort of people doing this, because I think I dismiss coding boot camps as being much less practical and more a kind of something you do alongside your day job, but this is full on commitment, get stuck in and come out with real skills that can be applied. So I think we should be taking more awareness of it, definitely.
Definitely.
So thank you very much, Sarah. Thanks for coming in and speaking to us.
Thank
If
you for
anyone
having
has
me.
any questions, and I haven't said this as we've gone along, but do drop them in the comments. And I don't think we've got anyone currently on right now, but we've had people dropping in and out. So if anyone has any other questions, if you're watching this on replay, please drop them in the comments. Sarah is in the group and we'll be able to answer them too. And we will be watching out for them. So thank you very much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.